Math was never our strong suit, but breaking down Ohio State football is. Sit back and join us for Buckeye Grove Instant Access, part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network.
You can do it!
Brought to you by BuckeyeGrove.com. Post-game thoughts, immediate analysis, and much, much more to put the big game into perspective. Without any further delay of game, here's your host, Kevin Noon.
Kevin, goddammit.
Hey, welcome to the BIA Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. It is Friday, holiday weekend. Excited about that? I am. I'm excited about it. Memorial Day weekend, 3-day weekend, barbecues, Indy 500, all that good stuff. And we're just a couple days away from the start of the major recruiting period, June. Things are opening up. How do we know that? Not only does the calendar tell us that, but we had an opportunity earlier today to speak with Mark Pantoni, assistant AD of player personnel and new on-campus recruiting director, Erin Dunston, and learned all sorts of things from them over the course of about 35 minutes or so. A lot of good stuff. We're going to play a couple of clips from the Zoom call earlier today and I'll give you my thoughts. Now, if you've been paying attention to the shows, June is not a surprise. You've known that it's coming. You've known that recruiting is going to be big. How big? Well, they kind of talked about that, and we'll get to those numbers here in a second. But all your major colleges are excited about having the opportunity to get guys on campus for the first time in, year and a half? I mean, honestly, when you look at how the cycle's working, it may as well be 2 years. You've had the class of 21 who largely committed to schools sight unseen. 22, Ohio State sitting with Rivals.com's number one rated recruiting class. You got 10, 12, players already verbally committed at this point. A lot of them have never seen campus. So it's going to be big. And then you throw on top of that camps. And that's going to be really big for 23s and 24s. But you're going to have some 22s who are going to be on campus as well, looking to earn that offer. So you think you know Ohio State's board, but you don't know. Because you could have a couple of those camp offers, something that we certainly didn't have in 21 because there were no camps. So vis-a-vis, no camp offer, no camps. But now we have camps. So there are a couple guys. We had an opportunity to talk about them on our live show earlier this week, as well as our June Cruton episode of BIA. Be sure to look that up. I'll try and include a link in the notes here. But let's go to Mark Pantoni when he was asked about just not having all of the on-campus responsibilities last year. I mean, he certainly found ways to keep himself busy. That's without a doubt. But, what did he go through with all of that?
Probably added a couple of years back onto my life with just without all the craziness of campus visits. But it was great in that it provided me more time to do scouting reports during our fall season, just to help the coaches. So I spent a lot of time scouting our opponents, which is good because now with this one-time transfer rule, now I have notes on every team we played, and I would take notes on other players. So if they now enter the portal, at least I've graded guys and got a head start that way.
So, I mean, we talk about the portal, and maybe that's not as much of the conversation come June when you're going to have dozens of players in on official visits and all that good stuff, but the portal is real. Ohio State's still out there pursuing former USC linebacker Palaie Naoteote. And close enough. Just call me EA. And, Ohio State's certainly still involved there. We may not be hearing a lot of news at the moment, but that doesn't mean that things have fallen apart. Ohio State was involved in trying to land Henry To'oTo'o, who ended up going to Alabama instead. It happens. Ohio State certainly has seen a couple players go elsewhere by way of the portal as well. Jamison Williams probably being the biggest name. Max Ray as well. I mean, you're going to have some names. You still might have some names. Ohio State certainly is under the 85. But maintaining the portal really is going to be a major job at all universities. And honestly, within this industry, it's going to be a job. Be sure to follow @RivalsPortal on Twitter just to keep track of all of the portal movement out there. And the vast majority of that is not going to be high 1A to high 1A. For every Henry To'o, there's the guy transferring from the D2 school to the D2 school, or the Division I FCS school to D2 or whatnot. You're not going to see hundreds of guys going from Power 5 school to Power 5 school. So, that's where To'o or Jamison Williams or guys like that, they're the exception to the rule. But just as much of recruiting is going to be about portal management. Not only keeping tabs on, you certainly don't want your frontline players transferring out. I mean, that's how you go from being a pretty good team to a pretty marginal team quickly if you don't keep track of all of that. But also, you need to make sure that you are going out there and keeping track of the portal. Ohio State is not going to be a school that needs to do a ton of diving into the portal, but you darn well better believe that Mark Pantoni and members of his staff are going to be keeping tabs on that. Anytime a player goes in, you need to know what's going on. And it's going to be that preparedness that is going to separate the great from the good and the good from everybody else. And Ohio State certainly has been amongst the great when you look at recruiting. So there's no reason to believe that they won't be amongst the great in terms of portal recruiting. And I use that term loosely because everybody wants to accuse everybody else of portal tampering and all sorts of things of that nature. And that's for another time, another place. But, that's where Mark Pantoni was spending a lot of his time. But for the next month, that's not necessarily going to be the case with all of the visits. Now we're going to turn to Erin Dunston, who is new at the Ohio State University, came over from the University of Kansas. Very impressed in this first interview with her, with Erin. I think she's going to do a great job picking up for Tory Majors, who's moved on to another opportunity. Very impressive, Erin Dunston. How many visits does Ohio State have on tap right now?
Yeah, for official visits, we have approximately 51 approved right now. And then for unofficial visits, it is kind of like an open door. If they come to camp and they want an unofficial visit, they can have that. If they're coming to see their coaches and get a tour, campus tour, they can do that as well. So I don't want to give you a small ballpark number or a large ballpark number, but right now on my calendar, it's about 150 to 200 kids.
That's a lot of kids. And we will get into another quote here in a second, right on the heels of it, just to put that number into perspective. But remember, this is more than just the official visits. With the camps and the unofficial visits and everything else, I mean, just the number of visits standalone on the OVs, on the official visits is staggering. But then you put everything else in, pretty much every day in the month of June is spoken for. So Ohio State's coaches and support staff and everybody else, they better enjoy this Memorial Day weekend because it's on. It's on after that. There's no time for pussyfooting around or anything else. It's going to be every day. Every day, bring the juice, as Kerry Combs would say, about the juice. They're going to need to bring the juice because it's going to be all about recruiting. There's no backdrop of any games or anything along those lines. It's going to be nonstop recruiting, nonstop camps, and we know that camps are about evaluation, and evaluation is about recruiting. But, where do these numbers stand in comparison maybe with some other years? We turn to Mark Pantoni again for that.
Obviously, for 1 month, it's very overwhelming. So our max every year is usually 62 with a 6 rollover. We probably, in a normal year, probably get in the high 40s to low 50s. So this is pretty extraordinary, but not unexpected either.
Not unexpected. And you knew this was going to happen. Once campuses opened up, everybody's going to be bringing their commits in as well. We'll talk about that on the other side of this quick break that's coming up here in a minute. It's going to be standard. And this isn't even just an Ohio State thing. It's going to be all of your major programs. I mean, even some of the programs that you may not think of as major, they still are looking to bring a lot of kids in. mean, and I'm not going to pick on any schools and name any and say, well, this program's inferior, whatever. Trust me, y'all can do that. That's all out there. But this isn't a case of where, a lot of these kids have already developed a list of, 3-5 schools, and, good old State U somewhere may not be able to compete with Alabama, Ohio State, Florida State, and I don't know, Texas. I mean, we're just picking a couple schools out of a hat. So they certainly have got their list of kids ready. So it's going to be on everywhere. And with the weekends of the 4th, the 11th, the 18th, and the 25th, plus the ability to take midweek visits, there's going to be a lot. And Ohio State certainly is not limited to just the Saturdays. There are the midweek visits. We've spoken about that again, as I've said. Refer to our live show earlier this week. Refer to our June Cruton show. I'm not going to list all the names. This is more just about what we got from Mark Pantoni and Erin Dunston earlier today. And I didn't cut this quote up for it, but Mark Pantoni said, and I don't think he was joking, that come July, he's not going to have that phone on. It's not going to be reachable. But, we know better than that. Mark Pantoni is a grinder. He just, he kind of developed a position under Urban Meyer, and now that position is everywhere. So don't believe for a second that Mark Pantoni isn't going to be easily accessible. I mean, he may not be sitting over at his office at the Woody Hayes complex, but a lot of guys could be coming to decisions come July or August, that I want to decide before my senior season type of commitment. So he'll be available. But this month is going to be the same as about 6 months in terms of what it is for recruiting. We got a couple more quotes that we'll talk to, but let's take a quick break here, and we will reset and more on our conversations with Mark Pantoni and Erin Dunston, all about Ohio State recruiting on the other side of this quick break. Hague Water Conditioning has been treating well in city water in Central Ohio with American-made water filtration products for over 60 years. Have a water quality problem? The water treatment experts at Hague know how to solve it. Not sure if your water softener is working? They will test, inspect, and sanitize any brand of water softener for only $20. Schedule a system checkup or water test today by calling 614-836-2195 or visit them online at HagueH2O.com. That's HAGUE H2O.com. Welcome back to the BIA Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Noon. I am flying solo today, but honestly, I am not flying solo. Plenty of clips from Mark Pantoni and Erin Dunston from the recruiting side of things at Ohio State. Had the opportunity to speak to them about 9 a.m. today. Been kind of a chaotic day, so just getting around with this. It's a good way to get into the weekend. Not everybody consumes the podcast the second it comes out, but maybe sitting out on the patio, tending to the charcoal, trying to get something ready. What's your favorite thing to cook for a holiday weekend? I'd love to do a brisket, but I'm not going to. I got a tri-tip that I think I'm going to put on there. Also have like a pre-done roast beef. I don't know. We'll see. But I could do a whole show on talking about grilling and smoking meats. That's for another time, another place. This is all about recruiting. And one of the biggest things here is Ohio State is going to have most of its commits in pretty much day one. And that doesn't mean June 1st, but June 4th, that first recruiting weekend. I believe that's the Friday, because the traditional recruiting cycle is you take your official visit, starts on Friday, ends on Sunday. The vast majority of Ohio State's recruiting class is going to be in for that first day, for that first weekend. And there's an argument there. Do you bring them all in together? I mean, these guys have all committed to be Buckeyes. They're all, barring a decommitment along the way, they all will be Buckeyes. Not all of them have had a chance to meet. I mean, certainly guys who, reside close to one another, know each other or whatnot, but Quinn Ewers and CJ Hicks haven't necessarily spent a ton of time together. We could go through the class, Benji Gosnell or Bennett Christian and other guys. I mean, it's not set up to the point of where they've had a chance to really hang out under the spring game or things of that nature. On the other side of the argument, do you want them all coming in at once, or do you want to spread them out to where you have a core group of guys who are already who are already sold on Ohio State in there to hang out and talk to and honestly recruit uncommitted players. I can make an argument either way. I asked that question of Mark Pantoni here Friday morning, and this is what he had to say.
Yeah, we discussed that as a staff, and we just felt like since they've been so loyal to us, we wanted them to get here that first weekend, just because they deserve it. They deserve to all be here together, get to know each other. They are our best recruiters, them along with our current players. So I know some of the local guys, I'm sure will come back other weekends and help, but no, it was our decision to get them all here that first weekend if they could.
And ultimately, I think that's the right decision. Not that they asked me. And Mark, if you're listening, you don't need my acceptance. And I know Mark, he keeps an eye on what's happening over at Buckeye Grove. Not sure if he listens to the podcast. Shoot me a text message if you do hear this, or if one of your staffers relays the message. I think it's the right decision because ultimately in recruiting, you have to keep recruiting your commits. I don't care if they're sold until they're signed. It doesn't really matter. And it's not that there's some sort of, dare I say, a gentleman's agreement. And anybody who's followed recruiting for a while understands that I use that term tongue-in-cheek. There's not a gentleman's agreement out there that once a kid verbally commits somewhere that you're just going to let them be. So I think it's important to have all these guys in at once, really develop the bonds as a recruiting class, as a group of players. And obviously strange stuff happens. I mean, we saw Deshaun McCullough decommit to go to Indiana, but that also took his dad taking a job there and an elder brother and a younger brother both either committing in terms of younger brother Day or transferring there in terms of older brother DeLand, for all of that to come together. So you sit there and you make sure that your core recruiting class is all in there together, that they develop those bonds that have only been there through the phone, through Twitter, through, Snapchat. I don't know what all of the current cool social media platforms are at this point. I'm doing well to have Facebook and Twitter. So not to date myself, not to make myself seem any less cool. I don't know exactly where all of that happens. I certainly could probably name 5 apps that don't exist anymore that I've heard of. But aside from that, getting them all together, I think, is important. Plus, you're probably, in terms of the kids that are going to be in, that first weekend, the roster of uncommitted players is going to be the second strongest of all the weekends, with the 25th probably being the strongest. And that's not taking anything away from any player who's not on that weekend, but just the way I see it, it's like that. And then that leads me into the final clip that I have here. Ohio State's recruiting reach obviously is national. They can recruit from coast to coast. They haven't really been able to break through somewhere like Mater Dei in Santa Ana, California, but they certainly can recruit the state of California. They can go in, they can recruit Florida, they can recruit the Northeast. The Ohio State brand certainly allows that reach. Ohio State's success on the field, success of putting guys in the league, all of that is there. So the Buckeyes don't, they're not limited by territories. And it's been a minute since Ohio State has only recruited the state of Ohio and maybe a neighboring state or two, but the reach has been there. But what I want to focus on is that with a December early signing period, visits here in June, there's not a lot of time left. And especially if you go through a player who uses all of his official visits in June, you do have the chance for the unofficial visits or whatnot, but is it kind of one crack at some of these players in terms of, you need to sit there and play your best hand right then and there, because that might be your only opportunity until you can get them back on campus, maybe under the backdrop of a game, be it Oregon, Penn State, something along those lines. that question was posed to Mark Pantoni as well.
We're putting all our chips in right now in the month of June because a lot of these guys we may never get back before December signing period. So that's a long time to go, and that impression may lose a lot of its luster. And a lot of the top guys we're going after right now, these next 4 weeks, they're going to be taking visits every weekend. And so, for a top guy who may be visiting this first weekend and then going on 3 more trips after, is that feeling of Ohio State still going to last? Because obviously the red carpet's going to be rolled out everywhere. So we just have to do a great job. And then after the visit, we just have to do a great job staying in touch. And, hopefully for some of these kids, I think the attraction of coming unofficially for a game will be there. So hopefully we can make that work in a lot of these cases.
And certainly it's going to be something that they're going to have to work on making work. But Ohio State's not going to be dealing with this as a unique situation. That's something everybody's going to have to deal with. I mean, NC2A rules in terms of all this are equal. We know what's going on, 5 official visits, so on and so forth. Not a case of where, SEC has an advantage or whatever. I mean, the advantage that may be there, though, is that if you are the hometown school for somebody like that, and it's just a matter of jumping in the car and going 2.5 hours whenever for that unofficial visit, go see a game, eat some pizza. That's not necessarily a situation for Ohio State and recruiting Georgia, Florida, Texas, California, wherever. It's a little bit more of a challenge with that. Plus, you put into the factors as well, everybody should be back to normal fall seasons for high school football. Not always easy getting on a plane first thing Saturday morning. Ohio State certainly has its fair share of noon games. We already know that Oregon's going to be one, so that might be a little bit more difficult for some guys to get to. Little birdie told me that Penn State might be later, not a noon game. Don't quote me on that, just something I'm hearing. So I think that might be the backdrop for the big unofficial visit weekend, maybe official visit weekend part 2 for guys that either get late offers. I mean, if you just don't know. I mean, you sit there and you think you know what the board looks like today. You blink and it's changed because it's just a matter of that. I mean, what happens if a target commits elsewhere? It's not always a case of where something just perfectly slides down. It's like if it's not 1, it's 2. I mean, things certainly matter. Every domino affects every other domino 6 different ways. But yeah, it's going to be important for Ohio State to be able to come out there, play its A game, knowing that everybody else is probably going to play their A game too. And then just that the relationships that these Ohio State coaches, these Ohio State recruits have with these players, the opportunities that Ohio State presents, so on and so forth, outweigh all of those situations that are similar. I'm not going to say equal, because if it was equal, then nobody would ever know where anybody go in recruiting. I mean, there certainly are schools that have advantages over other ones. That's not for me to decide. That's for every individual recruit to decide. But, Alabama, and it's however many years it's won the national recruiting title, certainly has its share of advantages. And again, as I said, I'm not going to denigrate other schools or whatever, but good old State U somewhere that doesn't necessarily recruit so well probably doesn't have the advantages Ohio State, Alabama, some of these other programs have. But, I want to thank Mark Pantoni and Erin Dunston for and Ohio State Sports Information for making that interview available earlier today. It was kind of unexpected. Found out about it pretty late on Thursday evening, so it was a pleasant surprise. We've turned a couple stories from that over at Buckeye Grove. Be sure to check it out. And if you're not a member at Buckeye Grove, why not? Get on board. Email me, kevin@buckeyegrove.com. If you're not a member, you've been on the fence, you need a little convincing, I'll see what I can do. Love to have you. Love to have you. Great community, great staff. All we're missing is you. So get on board. Help complete that. Help complete that. But, outside of that, I want to wrap up this show. I want to wish everybody an impending happy Memorial Day weekend. Be sure to enjoy it. Be safe. Remember what we are remembering this weekend. Let's, be thankful for those that gave the ultimate sacrifice. And, until the next time, I'm Kevin Noon. It's the BIA Podcast, and I'll talk to you very, very soon.
Be sure to stay up to date with Buckeye Grove Instant Access when the news breaks or after the big game, exclusively at buckeyegrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher as part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network. Hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know and never miss a single episode.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to click on that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing, and come visit us over at buckeyegrove.com for all the best Ohio State information on the web.